Welcome to the lesson that will demonstrate how to add images to a slide presentation that will be shared among your peers. By this time, you should understand what the techniques are. If you don't, click on Techniques on slide number 6 and go ahead and go through the slide presentation. It will explain the technique and then it will have examples. There's also the photography unit that's available on this slide presentation, and you can get a lot of resources here as well. You should have been assigned a slide at this time. The first slide has been done as an example. This is what I set up to represent the different techniques for photography. So let's say, for example, you are slide number 9. Go ahead and type in your name. You would then click on the technique image. You would then choose Replace Image and choose Search the Web. Now for background, what tends to get you a background image is portrait. So I'll look at portrait when I do my search. If you're going through the images and you're not getting what you want, you might want to change your keyword search. You want to avoid taking pictures of subjects that have a busy background. Find a background that won't compete with the subject. So I'll go back to that slide and maybe I'll type in child. So this is a good example. You can click on that and then choose Replace or double click on the image. Close-up involves getting really close to the subject. You want a lot of detail. Here are some examples of close-up images. Bugs are usually good ones, so I'm going to go ahead and try a bug. So I'll click on that. I will choose Replace Image, Search the Web, and I'll do Close-up Bug and look for something. If that doesn't work, maybe Close-up Eye, which seems to be a common one. But you want to be creative with your keyword search and the images that you're going to represent. Try not to choose images that other students are doing. We want to mix this up with a variety of images. I did a variety of keyword searches and decided I'm going to do a close-up of a puppy. So I'll double click on that image to load it onto the presentation. I will now continue with the other techniques. If necessary, you want to visit this presentation to read about those techniques. So depth of field tends to give a sense of distance. In a lot of the photos, the background will tend to be more blurry. So I'm going to go ahead and check that out right now. I will choose Replace, Search the Web, and look for an image that gives a sense of depth for depth of field. After playing around with the keyword search involving depth of field, I tried depth of field and then train, and I came across this image. Keep in mind that when you do your keyword search, you might not necessarily get the image that matches the technique. So you really have to understand the technique. The world is full of objects which make perfect natural frames, such as trees, archways, and holes. By placing these around the edge of the composition, you help to isolate the main subject. So here's an example. This girl is being framed by this archway. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the presentation, click on Framing, choose Replace Image, Search the Web, and maybe I'll do Framing, Arches, and see what I get. There's that one image that we just had on the presentation. I'm not going to use it because I want to mix it up. I did a variety of keyword searches for framing as well. I tried framing arches, I tried framing holes, and finally framing trees, and came across this image. So I'll replace that. Whatever you do, do not delete that image if you want to replace it. What you want to do is re-click on the image, choose Replace Image, and then search the web again. Do not delete those images. I went ahead and decided to replace that image by clicking on the older image and choosing Replace Image, and I came across this image by choosing Framing Castle. So I'll double click and replace it with that. I'm not going to do a demo for the rest except for rule of thirds, but I do want to point out if you need to go look at the examples in that presentation. I'm going to go ahead and choose rule of thirds because it is a bit tricky. I will choose Replace Image, Search the Web, and if you type in rule of thirds, you might not necessarily get what you want. So you might want to type in rule of thirds and maybe a tree and see if you can see a tree that is representing a rule of thirds photo and scroll through that. Keep in mind when doing a rule of thirds, the subject falls along that grid. In this case, they're on the right hand side of the grid. I tend to like the ones either on the right or the left. When scrolling through rule of thirds tree, there's a lot of images that have nothing to do with rule of thirds. So you really have to understand what rule of thirds is. This woman here is falling on that grid, so I will choose her. I will continue to represent the remaining techniques. I'll be right back. I went ahead and put them all together. I intentionally made a mistake with symmetry so that I can demonstrate how you will be providing feedback to your peers. So right now I am me in this presentation, and I'm going to provide feedback to the student. I would click on comments in the upper corner and then choose comment. I would then write the following. So I went ahead and wrote, all your images are really nice and complement the techniques being represented. However, the symmetry should be replaced with an actual photo and not an illustration because this is photography and not drawing. And then I would choose comment. This will give feedback to your peers so they can make modifications if necessary. I would then come in as the student with that feedback, and I would go ahead and choose replace image and look for another image. I went ahead and replaced the symmetry image by typing in symmetry in nature. Once you've made the changes based on student feedback, you can choose resolve. This concludes the session on how to set up your slide and to provide feedback to your peers on photography techniques. Until next time, you have a wonderful day.